Major League Baseball is officially coming back. We're not lying. This is the truth. We have a season that is underway in just under a month, and we're going to talk about it here on the Let's Debate podcast. My name is Nick Delahanty. Right away, I want to bring in my co-host Kyle Delahanty. Kyle, how's it going? And while you're at it, give us an update on how you're feeling too.
Shoulder's feeling good. Swelling went down. Pain's kind of lessening over time. Starting to get some movement on it. Movement going with it. So I'm feeling better. Thanks for asking. But like Nick said, welcome back to Let's Debate podcast. We've got another episode for you guys today. It feels like forever since our last episode, but at the same time, I feel like time is flying. So we're living in a really odd time right now with COVID going around. It's really throwing off my day, at least, I should say. So, but with that being said, if you haven't checked out our last episode, Nick and I had some fun. We decided to do an NBA trivia. And, if you haven't gotten a chance to check that out yet, the website is right in front of you on our page. If you consider yourself a basketball junkie, you want to test your knowledge, make sure you go check that out. While you're doing that, head over to our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Give us a like, follow, share our content. And we just really appreciate everyone who has done that already. It's been, you all been really supportive. And, we love doing this. So, and you could also check out our shop, which is on the screen as well, if you want to add to your wardrobe a little bit too. But, with that being said, we have some answers. We have an agreement. The MLB and the MLBPA, after a 3-month hiatus and rejection after rejection after rejection, have finally come to an agreement to return to play. And we're going to have the MLB season underway shortly. So I can speak for myself here. I'm very excited. I think baseball fans around the world are excited. So, Nick, how excited are you about this?
Oh man, I'm way too excited, and it kind of gives you that feel that we're getting somewhat close to reality again. The NBA is coming back, the NHL is coming back, Major League Baseball is now coming back, and I get that the numbers are still going up in some areas, and that the virus is definitely not out of the way, but to have a little bit of normal back is going to be nice, and it's going to be rather interesting and exciting to me how this season is going to play out. Obviously, we're not going to have 162 games. It's going to be 60 games. And to me, that adds to the dimension of how much each game actually does matter. And there's going to be a lot of different stipulations that we're going to go over in the show, and we're going to discuss different rules that they put about. We'll even get into a little Yankees and Mets, talk about how it impacts them as a whole. But just to kind of go over, like you said, about the hiatus and the back and forth, I think that both sides should be ashamed of themselves. First and foremost, the owners are very greedy. We know this. They're not getting revenue from ticket sales and merchandise, so you knew that there was going to be a little bit of greed in the way. And the players, they want what's theirs, and they were greedy as well. When you go into a negotiation room, and in a time like this, you sit down and you say to yourself, you're negotiating, but every time you kind of meet in the middle doesn't mean you necessarily have to put something else on the table for your benefit. And did it hurt the game? Absolutely. I think that they lost a major opportunity to get fans into watching the sport. My concern is the future of the game, especially with the bargaining agreement up after 2021. If they can't agree to a deal now, how are they going to agree to a deal then? So hopefully baseball gets us back. It kind of heals over time, but to have an idea of when we're going to get baseball is exciting to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think they kind of dropped the ball a little bit. The fact that the NBA and the NHL were able to kind of come to an agreement, and we're talking almost like a month ago now. They're about a month late. I would say definitely from the NHL. I'd probably say a few weeks off, maybe even up to a month with the NBA. But I agree with the fact that I'm excited for baseball to come back. I mean, in exactly a week, just about a week from today, July 1st, we're jumping into spring training. And I do think that it's strange to watch because it is a shortened season. How in shape are these guys? I know they're going to have a few weeks to get into spring training, but they had winter workouts. You know, they were training winter and they jumped into regular spring training, and then that's when COVID hit. And I'm sure a lot of these guys have been doing a lot of personal things, but really like a live game, they haven't done in a long time. So I think that's going to have an effect on the season. And I know before we jump really into things, it's important to mention that I saw a graphic just yesterday about what the standings would have been was cut off at 60 games last year. And we don't have a world champion, Washington Nationals. So, you know, midway through the season, compared to the last half of the season, can drastically change things. So some of these teams that we might think are going to do some damage, they might not get things going right away. And there you go. It's a lost season. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
That's a very good point about the Nationals, too. You never know what to expect, especially a shorter season. A longer season allows you that opportunity to say, okay, we have time to catch up from this. But you go on a 4 or 5 game losing streak, and all of a sudden your back's against the wall. Injuries can happen. You know, you said it, the shortened amount of time to get ready. Who knows who's going to be in game shape? There's a lot of different things that are going to play out in this, and we're going to go over a couple of them on today's show. So like Kyle said, July 1st is the reporting date. The ideal starting date of the season would be July 23rd or July 24th. Apparently, we're going to have a schedule by the end of the week. They haven't announced when yet. A 60-game schedule, like we said, will run till September 27th. So they're playing 60 games in 66 days. And it's important to note that if a suspended game, a game that's not counted as an official game, is suspended due to rain, the Major League Baseball made a rule that they will pick up that game from the moment that it was delayed. So there's no restarting games to kind of save teams. One of the rules that I personally like, and I want to hear your opinion on it, is the DH in the National League rule. I want you to tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think that's big because, you know, for years now, we've only seen a DH in the AL for the most part, and it adds to their lineup. I mean, that's a huge addition to an NL lineup. You know, you don't have a pitcher wasting a spot in the batting order, maybe 8th or 9th up. Now you have a legitimate professional baseball player, you know, taking a chance. So if you are batting in the 9 hole as a pitcher, you're no longer hitting there. You could put that DH wherever you would like. He could be one of your best hitters that may have not been starting. You don't know. So just gives an opportunity for the leadoff batter to get back on. And I've always said that I felt that the AL had a little bit of an advantage when it came to having the DH. Now I think it's fair play. So I think that's a great rule that they decided to put in for the start of the season.
I think that this rule is one that we're going to see long term, and here's why.
Yeah.
As a Yankee fan, I go back to the Chien-Ming Wang days, where he was one of the most, if not the most dominant pitcher in the game at the time. And I'll always remember him getting hurt, playing in Houston, hurting his ACL, and never being the same after that. And ever since, I've had the idea, you know, there are pitchers out there that can hit. Noah Syndergaard, Jacob deGrom, those guys can hit. Nobody's denying that. But nobody's paying admission or price to watch on TV to watch those guys hit. You want to see professional hitters that are doing that daily. You want to see them hit. So having the National League add the DH, it's not only going to add opportunities for teams, but it's going to increase trade value for some of these guys. You mean to tell me that the Yankees won't have an increase in trade value for Miguel Andujar if they decide long term that we're going to have a DH in the National League? And now it's a fair play, like you said. You're going into a National League ballpark with your DH. So yeah, when the American League would go there, it was an advantage to the National League because you didn't factor in that player who was DHing. You know, you might not have a Giancarlo Stanton that was a primary DH or J.D. Martinez. But now you have to manage a little more as an American League team. Now it's fair across the board. So I love the rule. I hope that they agree to it long term because I think it's smarter for the game.
Right. I agree with that. I think one of the things that I took from it and that I like, and it's not so much of a rule, but it's just the style of play that they're going to be playing right now, is how they broke out the schedule and how they're going to be playing. You know, we do know that they're playing a 60-game season, and 40 of those games are going to be within the division. So the Yankees will be playing the Boston Red Sox, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Toronto Blue Jays each. So, you know, obviously 10 times 4 is 40. celebrity, and and from there they'll be taking on one division from the opposing league, which obviously would be the NL. So they'll be taking on the NL East, which includes, the New York Mets, the Philadelphia Phillies, Washington Nationals, defending World Series champs, Atlanta Braves, and the Miami Marlins. And they'll be taking on those teams. They'll be playing 20 games against those teams to equal out to the 60. But something interesting that Nick mentioned earlier to me was how they're actually versing the Mets a little bit more because, they're crosstown rivals. And if you've noticed, they're regionalizing these games, which I think is smart considering the virus is going around. But I'm really interested in seeing that. I feel like it's probably going to be a little repetitive, versing all those teams so much and only equaling out to 60 games. But this has a major effect on the season. If you just are lucky enough to be taking on an easy division of your own and then an easy division in the NL, that could get you into the playoffs. So this is going to be something that we've never seen before. I think it's going to have a drastic effect on the season, but I'm really excited to see how it plays out. And I do like how the Yankees and Mets are getting a few more games than they would against some of the other teams because you know how Yankees and Mets games are and how the fans around here get involved in those.
Yeah, I love it. And I don't think people realize over 162 games, you play your division about 18 or 19 times a year. So over time, it kind of evens out because you're playing against teams from other divisions and it's kind of spaced out more. But I think it's going to be more important every game because you don't know who in your division is going to get hot at the right time. And like you said, you made a good point about the cross rival games in the opposing division. You might play against the NL East like the Yankees are, where you have 3 quality teams in that division, and you're seeing the Mets 6 times. And I wouldn't count them out. I wouldn't count the Nationals out. I wouldn't count the Braves out. That's 3 quality teams you're playing right there. So the way the schedule falls is going to impact. It's going to make a huge impact on how this plays out. The other thing I'm concerned about is how Toronto and Tampa are going to pull this off. There's reports that Toronto's going to be playing their games in Florida. I would say the name of the city, but I don't want to botch it. And Tampa, it's in one of the highest peaking areas for the virus. So I would like to see how that plays out. One happy person, though, has got to be Gleyber Torres.
Why is that?
Well, you see, Glaber's playing 10 of his 60 games against the Orioles, and last year, I have his numbers right. I have his numbers right here for you. So last year, he hit .394 against them, 13 homers and 75 plate appearances. So Glaber's going to have a lot of time against the Orioles this year. He's going to be a little happy 23-year-old.
Well, yeah, but another guy who's done really well against the Orioles in his career too is Aaron Judge. Remember, I believe it was his rookie year. He hit it was double digits of home runs alone against the Baltimore Orioles. He's always played pretty well against them. So this is another thing. I think we could see really good baseball too because these teams are used to playing their division rivals often. So they have seen a lot of these pitchers, and the pitchers have seen a lot of these batters. So it's like division play is always interesting. And baseball is so unpredictable. That's another thing you have to remember. Like Nationals to win the World Series last year. No one expects, I would say 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 of the teams each year to make the playoffs. So the fact that this is a reduced schedule, packed in versus a lot of these divisional opponents, you're going to have some of these players stepping up against their teams because you're seeing so much of them. Like we may see some, extended hit streaks here. If you're used to the Orioles pitchers and the Blue Jays pitchers, or the Mets are used to Washington pitchers, who knows? I mean, things could get really streaky.
Now, there's another rule too I want to talk about with you, and that's the extra inning rule. And in case you didn't hear about it, and this is the first time you're getting wind of it, starting in the 10th inning, this is an independent and minor league rule. A runner will be placed on second base to start the inning. Why is that? They're trying to cut down extra inning games. Why? Because the pitchers don't have enough time to get ready for the season, and they're trying to avoid injuries. Now, having seen it in minor league play, I like it. I think that in shorter rosters, more games, things like that, there is a place for it. Major League Baseball, I'm not so sure. I'm interested to see how it plays out. They did use it in the World Baseball Classic, I believe. but I just don't know how fans are going to react to this type of rule.
Yeah, having a runner start on second base in extra innings. Isn't there a little league rule like that?
That I don't know. That might be like regional, like type of rule. But
I
all
feel
I'm
like I
thinking,
thought there was. What was that?
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I thought there was a rule. Like I don't know which level of play it's at, but I could have sworn there was a rule where, like, if you have someone starting at second, it's the last batter of the previous inning, so that it doesn't kind of like there's no conflict if that kid needs to get up. But I may be talking crazy right now. I could have just sworn I've heard that over time. I swear.
Yeah, I never heard
I might
that.
be talking crazy.
But all I'm thinking is, put it logically. Say you're in the 11th inning, and you have two out. Oh no, how about this? We'll go in the ninth inning. Bottom nine, you have nobody on base. Your fastest guy is up at the plate. You mean to tell me that thinking extra innings, you're not going to tell him to strike out or get out purposely to go on second base to start the 10th?
Oh yeah, I know. And also, I think what they need to figure out is who goes on second base, because there's a drastic difference between the team having to choose who they want on second base, or like I said, the previous innings last batter. Because if we need someone on second base, and we could choose who we want to, I'm pretty sure the Yankees are going to choose Brett Gardner over Gary Sanchez. Like there's a drastic difference.
It will be.
So,
It will be
so
your last out. It will 100% be your last out
yeah.
of the inning before. That's why I said about the whole, like, say I'm going to use it for instance because he's fast. Say Tyler Wade gets a start for the Yankees, right? He's in the 9 spot. They're bottom 9, nobody on base. Aaron Boone, you don't think Aaron Boone's going to tell him, you know what, strike out, don't swing the bat because you're going to go on second base to start the bottom half of the 10th inning and we're going to win the game because you're going to score? It adds such a dimension to it. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that's a great point. That was kind of one of the things that I was confused on was how are they going to figure that out? That's why I said I could have sworn there was a play that did that, but I mean I've heard that from someone else, so I could be talking crazy, but but yeah, never mind.
So while you're talking crazy, let's go into the new roster rules. Before the beginning of the season, they said it was going to be a 26-man, which is an upgrade from the 25-man a year before and previous years. Due to the virus and the lack of time to prepare, Major League Baseball made a rule where on opening day, teams can have 30 players on their active roster. After 2 weeks, it goes down to 28, and then after 4 weeks, it goes down to that 26. So it gives you an extended couple of players on the roster. Now, we all know how important those spots on the roster could be. Put your manager cap on. If you're using those spots, what positions are you looking for?
Well, that's tough. I think it really depends on the roster that you have, right? Like, what are your needs? I guess if we're going to talk the Yankees, I guess.
Yeah, you could go as the Yankees. You could
the
talk about it as the Yankees. Yeah.
That's tough. I mean, I feel like with the Yankees, I mean, we have so many injuries every single year. Like, you almost want to grab a little bit of everything. But, you know, you can't go wrong with grabbing a few more pitchers. And I would go outfield because we've just had so many injuries throughout the years of outfield. Stanton's always out. Judge has been in and out. Hicks is coming back from injury. Like, so I guess as a Yankees manager, if I had to choose, those are the two positions that I'm aiming for. What do you think?
See, if we're talking Yankees, I kind of cheated a little bit because earlier for Bronx Pinch Shifts, I wrote an article detailing what the Yankees opening day roster could look like. So I had some research in looking up this. Personally, I lean toward pitching, especially bullpen.
Yeah.
I had my 5 starters. I actually took Jonathan Loáisiga as my 6th starter, and I put him in the bullpen. So I essentially had 11 relievers. So it ended up being 16 pitchers, 14 position players. And the way I looked at it, and you made a good point about the outfielders, I said if they're all healthy, you have 5 outfielders on your roster. You have Stanton, Judge, Gardner, Tauchman. Yeah, you have your handful of guys, right? I kept Tyler Wade as an outfielder and an infielder because he could play both, and Andujar could play left field. So I essentially used guys in multiple positions. So it ended up being that I took more pitchers. I think with the shortened amount of time, the extra bullpen arms are definitely helpful, especially early on, because you don't want to burn out those guys like Chapman, Britton, Ottavino. You could name it for any team, any of those good relievers. And you don't want to burn out your starters. Garrett Cole's not going to throw 8 innings on opening day. Like, I'm sorry to tell people, but it's not going to happen. So you do need the extra arms.
Yep.
You want to avoid those Tommy John surgeries because I think that there's going to be a peak in those for sure.
Yeah, and to touch on the last point that you made, I think that's going to be one of the more interesting things to watch because, listen, if you've watched baseball in the past, it feels like they play every single day. You know, when you're watching the Yankees throughout the season, they play, it feels like almost, I should say, every other day. And, now they're playing 60 games and you said 66 days. That's going to be a lot on them. And who knows if these injuries are going to pile up and that goes back to, are they going to be in shape or not? I do think the injuries are going to pile up. I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I would love to see a season where no one's really getting injured and we get to see all the star power that we possibly could. But yeah, that's something to think about as well.
And think about this too. Take Giancarlo Stanton, for instance, because local guy, injury prone as we know. The injured list is 10 days, 10-day injured list, and you have a separate kind of injured list for anybody who contacts COVID-19 or becomes kind of in touch with it. If you take 10 games, that's 1/6 of your season. And that's to say that that person sits the 10 days and comes back. That's a big chunk.
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about a regular injury where maybe you have to miss 3 weeks, right? 3 weeks is 21 days, but we'll just say you're missing 20 games in those 21 days. That's a third of the season right there. I mean, that's big. And that's why I think another important thing that comes up is the depth of your roster. And luckily, as Yankees fans, we have one of the better rosters in baseball. There's a lot of depth there. So that's what you're going to need. I think depth in the bullpen is going to be big, which, once again, the Yankees have. You just got to utilize those guys the right way. I wasn't really a big fan of the way Aaron Boone utilized those guys last year in the postseason, personally. So you could have the depth, but it's how you use the guys as well. And you brought up a good point about the separate list for people who contact COVID. Talk a little bit about the health and safety protocols that they put in. They're not allowing fans in the stands, which I feel like most of us expected. But they're not allowing fighting, which I don't know why you would allow it. But there's no spitting, they're social distancing. So it's going to be strange. It's going to be really strange to watch. But it's what you got to do right now. And I keep saying it, like, I feel like this whole thing is just going to be really interesting to pay attention to. But yeah.
I was kind of upset about the fighting, but then I realized that the Yankees don't play the Astros this year. So I was kind of just, we'll save it for 2021 if we have to. My favorite rule, personally, about the whole social distancing is, say you're the manager, right? You want to go argue a call. If you get within 6 feet of the umpire, you're automatically ejected and can face fines and suspension. Isn't that great?
I guess they're just trying to. I'm not even sure if that's really about COVID or they're just trying to protect the umpires at this point.
I don't know. Maybe they're trying to. John Boy's gonna have a lot of fun because if a manager gets mad and 6 feet apart, there's no way to kind of hide your mouth of what you're saying. So he's gonna have a lot of good takes for us on Twitter this year with those videos he puts out.
I feel like a lot of the fights are pretty fun to watch. Like when I wouldn't even call it a fight. I would say it's an argument between the coach and the umpire. I think it's gonna be funnier to see him have to stop about 6 feet away and still try to have that same show that same aggression and dominance. But there's a lot of interesting things going on with the season. Now we could jump into Yankees Mets if you want as well.
Absolutely.
What to expect from those two teams?
Absolutely. Let's start off with the Mets. We went into the Yankees a little bit.
Yeah.
New York Mets. Now, and I'm going to get ripped for this. I'm going to put this on our social media feed because I want people to know that I'm not Yankee biased, which you could say I am. It's fine. But I think that the New York Mets have a very, very good chance of making the playoffs this year. Am I crazy?
No, I agree with you. I actually have a few friends who are Mets fans, and I told them back in free agency, over the winter, I looked at their roster, especially their, and I was like, guys, I actually like your roster. I like your rotation. I think you guys can compete. You're in a tough division, but they're not bad. Like if their pitching, stays healthy, if their bats can get some runs, they're going to be a nice team in a tough division. So I'm in agreement with you on that.
I just think the whole manager situation, losing Beltran, I think that's going to play a little toll on them. But when you could throw DeGrom and Stroman up there, that pitching rotation alone, and you have to figure Edwin Diaz is going to be better than the atrocity he was last year. The guy's an elite pitcher. I don't know what happened, if it was just a move to New York or whatnot, but you have to expect he'll be better. They added Betances. They have Jeff McNeil and Alonso coming back. They have a nice core that could at least win the wild card in the NL.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think they'll win the division. I think the division's a little too tough, with the defending champs, the Nationals, and the Phillies have a better roster, an improved roster from last year. And the Braves were a playoff team last year, but the Mets are going to be right there. I really do believe that. And luckily for the Mets, if people have really followed them, just in recent memory, they usually do play pretty well in the first half of the season. And this is a shortened season, so that could work in their favor.
Oh, without a doubt. That's one of the reasons why I think that they're going to be okay, because of that shortened season. And I hate to sound crazy. I keep giving you some crazy takes here, but I think 3 teams from the NL East can make the postseason. I think that you could have an NL East wild card game.
I mean, that would be. Which teams do you think, though?
I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to give the Nationals the division. They lost Rendon, but they really didn't lose much else. I'm going to give them the division. I'm a firm believer, uncrown the champ. It is what it is. I say Braves and I say Mets and the Phillies are a close 4. I don't think the Phillies are that far behind, especially with the guys they have on the roster. I think that they're not terribly behind, but I think they're a little bit behind.
I don't know. I actually haven't done like my predictions yet. It's so early on, but if I had to say 3 teams are going to make it from that division, I'm in agreement with the Nationals. I think the Mets could slide in, but I'd actually pick the Phillies over the Braves. I don't know if the Phillies are there yet. If they don't make the playoffs this year, I think they definitely make it next year. Just Girardi's a good coach. They've added some nice. I don't remember exactly what Didi's contract is, but I know he's on the roster this year. We know how Didi is. We know the type of clubhouse guy he is. They added Wheeler, to the rotation, so they have an improved roster. They need to get things going. I'm not a huge fan of Bryce Harper. I think he's a little overrated. But those would be the 3 teams that I would choose from that division. And to be honest with you, as Yankees fans, it's not too good that we're even saying this, because we got to play these guys this year. So
it's crazy to think of it, but in the same token, if you're looking at it from a Yankees perspective, you're saying you're better than all 3 teams as it is. So as long as you're healthy, I think that they're better than all 3. Will it be tough?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you're only playing those teams. You're playing the Mets 6 times. So if the Mets have a good year, then that's a concern. But if you're playing the Nationals and the Phillies 3 times, if you win 1 or 2 of those games, you got to go into every series saying, okay, we got to win 2 out of 3.
Yeah. And what is it again? If we're versing, we do interleague 20 games. So if you break that down, we wouldn't really be playing the Nationals or the Braves too much. It would just be the Mets. So
yeah, think about it. It's 14 games between those 4 teams, because the Mets get 6.
Yeah.
So if you break it down by math, and it's a little less than 3 games each. So you might play somebody only twice and play somebody 4 times. They haven't announced it. I think they're going to do it by how they finished last year. I think that they're not going to say, oh, the Yankees are going to play the Marlins 4 times and play the Nationals once. I think they're going to look at how the standings went last year, and they're going to say, okay, you guys play the Mets, but your next highest opponent's going to be the Nationals or the Braves.
Right. And I think if you're looking at it, let's just say Yankees are versus the Nationals, you kind of want to hope that you fall in a 3-day stretch where maybe like Scherzer's not pitching. I know they still have Strasburg. I know they still have Corbin, but it could fall like that. You're only versing in 3 games, which is, usually 3 or 4 games is a series. But with the way the schedule is right now, who knows? And later in the season, who knows when it comes to injuries. One thing I want to mention, bringing that up, before we jump into the Yankees. Oh, did I just lose what I was going to say? Oh no! So the fact that they're going from a 30-man roster to eventually dropping down to a 26 over time. A part of me actually thinks that they should have kept a 30-man roster throughout the season. I know that's not how things typically go, and I know they're keeping some players almost like pretty much the minor league system, like the farm system, to have because of the virus. But I just think it would have been smart to maybe keep all 30 for the whole ride until at least maybe the playoffs, and maybe even increase the roster at that point. But we have no idea if this virus is going to spread. Like, we don't know how quickly these guys can pick it up. You start losing players, they start dropping like flies. That could have a massive effect on the team. So I think it would have been smart to actually keep a few more guys.
Oh, yeah, you can make the case that the 30-man for the whole year would have been ideal. But, again, it goes back to the owners not wanting to pay the players the prorated salary, all of that. So they gave a little bit of time for the extra bodies, and then they said, you know what, we're setting you free. A lot of these teams are going to have 30 guys in their camp. I believe the Yankees are going to set up in Scranton their 30-man kind of farm system where those guys are going to stay in shape and whatnot. But again, if one guy on a team gets the virus and it spreads, you're looking at a whole different dimension. It's like an injury. So it's really a tough thing to predict, and who knows if it's going to spread to the point where it might even halt the season.
And before we jump back into the Mets and the Yankees, last thing I'll say is when you're on the list for, coming in contact with COVID, there's no like minimum or maximum amount of days that you're on that list. The moment you're cleared, you're good to go and back in the game. And obviously they have to do that, or not back in the game, but back on roster. But they have to do that because you can't just keep someone out to quarantine them and miss 14 days because you're probably missing 13 to 14 games in that stretch. So I'm glad that they were like, okay, once they're clear, they're good to go.
Yeah, and they're going to be testing. This is actually a really good point that ties into this. They're going to be testing them twice a day. Players are not allowed to be at the ballpark, or managers, 5 hours prior to game start. Usually you have guys that are there a lot earlier. They have to be out an hour after the game. Reporters have to be out. I think the players have 90 minutes. So they have a little extra time to get out. But they're putting in all these protocols to make sure that the virus doesn't in fact spread. So I do credit them for putting these into play because it does come into consideration. You might not have it in your clubhouse, but one of the beat writers might come in and interview somebody and they might have it or have been in contact with it. So they're measures that are definitely going to help, and they're trying to limit as much contact as possible. They're trying to make it so people aren't around as many different people as possible. Even broadcast teams, they're not allowed to go on the road. Only radio people. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out as well.
Right. Now, jumping into the Yankees, what's your take on the Yankees? What do you think about 40 divisional games? And then out of all divisions that they could have versed the NL, they're versing the NL East. Is there another division you would have liked to see them play over them?
Well, see, and I did a podcast on the Pinstripe Talk podcast earlier on Wednesday, so I kind of thought about this a little bit. I like playing the NL East. Why? Because I think it's going to gear them up for the postseason. I think that if you're going to make the postseason, you might as well do it the right way. Beat good teams. You'll have your Baltimore. You'll have you could even throw Toronto in there. You could throw Boston possibly as teams that aren't as strong, but they're still division games. They're still games that are going to mean a lot, and you're going to have to take advantage of them. Aaron Judge is the scary part for me. Considering there's no update on the guy, and this has been since September, I'm starting to get a little weary. I'm starting to get a little nervous. However, when you look at this roster from up to top to bottom, it's the best roster in baseball. You can go, you have 30 man. If you've made a 30-man roster, you can make the case for 40 to be on that active roster. That's how good they are depth-wise at different positions. Personally, I think the shortened season benefits them more than anybody. You have a stellar starting rotation, even without Herman, and your bullpen's good enough to carry you. Your starter could give you 5 innings, and that bullpen's going to finish it out. So I think that if it benefits anybody, the delayed season, not only does it benefit by the roster, but it benefits by the injuries. Paxton was hurt. Hicks was hurt. Judge was hurt. Stanton was hurt. And 3 of those 4 guys are going to be ready to go. As long, bearing no injuries, we all know how last year turned out. I think that this could be something really good for the Yankees in 2020.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's 2 ways to look at it. Like, the Yankees the past few years, not even just last year, but the past few years, I feel like they deal with the most injuries in baseball every single year. They can't catch a break, but they still find a way to make it deep into the postseason. So I think the shortened season, there's one way you can look at it and say, okay, well, if there's a shortened amount of games, like if we're playing less games here, that could be better because it's less baseball, gives them less of an opportunity to get hurt. Maybe they can make it through the entire season. There's also that part of you that looks at it and says, okay, well, if they continue to get hurt, we can't sit there and say, all right, well, you might miss 30 games now, because then you're missing half the season and it's going to affect the team greatly. But I do agree. I think we've always played well against our division. Tampa, I looked at a power rankings actually right before this. I got it on Bleacher Report. Tampa is the 3rd ranked team in the MLB, according to that writer and his opinion on it. I don't know if I agree that they're the 3rd best team, but they're a tough team. They had a nice postseason run last year. They have a nice roster. They have a good pitching staff. Boston, we don't really know what's going to go on with that. We know Toronto and Baltimore, they're not the greatest teams, but it's a division. You know, you're going to lose some to those guys. And then it's like you mentioned, the NL, the NL East. I think it's just good practice in general for them to get ready for the postseason, because you're not just versing good rosters, but you're versing good rotations, and that's playoff baseball. You got to be able to hit the better pitchers, or you're not going to win a World Series. And they clearly weren't able to do that last year, and they haven't been able to do it the past few years. So if we're just solely going to focus on 60 games and 20 of those are going to be a mixture versus good rotations, I mean, that's great preparation for the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. And there's some points that you brought up that I want to touch on, too. First and foremost, I want to see Garrett Cole pitch against Scherzer, and I want to see him pitch against DeGrom. Like, that, I need that in my life. Like, out of his 10 starts he's going to make in the regular season, I need 2 of them to be against Scherzer and DeGrom. I need that. Like, I'm not asking for anything else. I need that in my life. I think that's the one thing that I'm going to ask from Major League Baseball to do is to set it up so those guys match up. In terms of the shorter schedule, the bullpen, I want to take you through some numbers here. This is the amount of appearances that the Yankees' top relievers had last year. Okay, we'll start with Chapman. Chapman had 60. Chad Green had 54. Ottavino made 73 appearances. Britton 66. Canley 72. So you're essentially going to cut that down. Those guys are going to be in mid-season form by the time they get to the postseason. Like, that to me is insane.
Yeah. No, yeah, that is insane. I didn't know those numbers existed, but and plus you have to think that these guys were still throwing well. Does that include the playoffs, or was that strictly regular season?
Strictly regular season.
Yeah, so think about the amount of innings they pitched in the postseason too, because we know because of our depth, Boone uses that to his full advantage. You know, he doesn't mess around. He'll take out the starter in the 5th inning if he really wants to, and get the bullpen to finish out the game. We even had some postseason games where these guys went into extra innings. So, I mean, you think about, they're throwing, some of them are between 50 and 70 appearances in the regular season. We have 60 games, and then you're going into the postseason. So, I mean, huge advantage for the Yankees and huge advantage for really any team with a deep bullpen.
And that's something that when you sit down and think about it, you don't think those guys were burnt out by the end of that postseason run. That's a lot of innings for guys coming out of the pen. So, yeah, you're playing a condensed schedule, and yeah, the Yankees are going to be cautious with using those guys, but you might only see them for 30 or 40 innings by the time we get to that 60-inning point, and that's half of what they've been used to throwing. So, like, Ottavino threw 73 innings last year. You would never think that, like, when you're he pitched so much, but you're not thinking so many innings. He'd have to average over an inning a game at that rate for 2020.
I think another thing to throw in there too, and I'm not meaning to like jinx it or think too ahead, but we know the type of pitcher Garrett Cole is. If Garrett Cole stays healthy and plays the way he always has his entire career, especially the past 3 years or 2 years, however long he was in Houston, he's a guy who could go the distance in a game. So if he's able to do that, you're saving the bullpen for even more times in the future, because those guys don't even need to step foot on the field.
You're
Like that could be every few days you do get 8 innings, 7 innings out of a starting pitcher, which, to be honest, our guys haven't been able to do that the past few years. Severino, Tanaka, those guys they don't typically go the distance. Every once in a while you get a complete game out of those guys.
Yeah, you get a random Tanaka 9 inning, like 92 pitch kind of eventful day. But
Shutout.
yeah, exactly. And another, like you said, but another guy that benefits from this is James Paxton. Yeah, he's healthy now, but before he came to the Yankees, the big thing with him was how many innings he's pitched in a season. His career high for innings pitched is 160. So take that into consideration.
Yeah.
He pitched 152 innings for the Yankees last year. If he makes his full 10 starts, well, it'd probably be like 12 starts, 60 games, 5 days rest, whatnot. If he makes 12 starts, if he goes 6 innings a start, that's not even 100 innings. So come the postseason, it'll be the same way, mid-season type of form. Like, I just think this is going to benefit. And I can't think of a team that, other in the American League, that has a better 1, 2, 3 than Cole, a healthy Tanaka, a healthy Paxton.
No, neither can I. I think the closest would be probably Houston. No, you know what? I wouldn't even. Tampa has a nice 1, 2, 3 as well. I mean, like they're not what we have, but they definitely are a competitive bunch. Um, One of the things that does annoy me is the fact that Severino had to get hurt, because then you would have had 4 guys who could really get in there. But it is what it is. I do have faith in the 3 guys we have, because we know Cole steps up in the postseason. We know Tanaka definitely steps up in the postseason. And Paxton has stepped up in the postseason as well. Like, for him to step in the way he did last year in his first year in New York, that a lot of guys can't do that. And he played pretty well. He gave us some strong innings. So,
and we got to see what they get out of J Happ and Jordan Montgomery. Those guys are question marks, but they could definitely help. And let's remember, there's a trade deadline, so August 31st. If they need another arm, rest assured, Brian Cashman's going to go get that arm. He's not going to wait. He's going to go get him. He thinks World Series this year. Somebody ends up on the table that he likes and he gets a good deal on him. He's going to jump.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned trade deadline, but before I jump into that, another guy that came to mind was Domingo Germán. I think he's the one guy right now who probably gets screwed in all this, because he's still on suspension. I remember last year when he got suspended, I was like, okay, well, they kind of included some games from last year, I think with the playoffs and everything, or the end of the regular season, whatever it was. And going into this year, at first, before COVID delayed the season, I should be back by mid-season. There really is no mid-season this year, Domingo. But aside from that, trade deadline, I was thinking about it, and it's weird because we're here at the end of June, almost going into July. We're at a point where it feels like we're almost at that trade deadline already. It's going to be weird to get to late August and think, okay, well, now a guy is going to be traded, because we're not used to that. So in my head, I kind of feel like there is no trade deadline this year, because we realistically are past that in the normal calendar season. So, but there is going to be a trade deadline, and we know Brian Cashman isn't afraid to make moves, and we've been looking. I feel like the past few years at the trade deadline, we've been looking for that piece of the puzzle in the rotation. Luckily, we got it in free agency this year, but I wouldn't mind bringing in another guy. And we definitely have the trade pieces to make a big move if we really need to.
Oh yeah, and you're right about Domingo. Did you know that if the Yankees make the postseason and they get 4 games in, he's eligible to pitch in the postseason?
Yeah,
Can you imagine that?
Just is he going to be able to bring anything? That's the only thing.
Yeah, are they going to bring him back after not playing for over a year? I don't think that's the case, but it's just weird that Major League Baseball wouldn't just say, "Oh, you know what? Your suspension will be done, just 60 games, and then you come back in 2021, pal." That's so weird to me.
Yeah, it's like he got injured, like a Tommy John situation. He's been out the whole year. Like, his suspension could have been over probably around this time. To be honest with you, could have been around this time if the season was started normally. But he shouldn't have done what he did.
The guy who lucks out from this is Aaron Hicks. You have Tommy John surgery in October, and he's probably not going to miss any games. That's incredible to me.
Yeah, I remember when he got injured and they were like, should be back around August next year. I was like, man, the bad luck just continues into next season. It just carried into the next season, but worked out nice for him. And you mentioned a few other guys before: Stanton, Paxton, Judge. Those are all guys that had huge question marks. Some of them still may have question marks, but they had plenty of time to rest now. I mean, you should be ready to go.
So I think that given that we've talked about everything in terms of a 60-game season and whatnot, I want to kind of break down. I'm going to give you a question for both teams, Yankees and Mets, and same question for both. We'll start with the Mets. If the Mets want to make the postseason and make a deep run in the postseason, what specific part of their team has to carry them?
That's tough. I feel like I'm probably going to give the answer that maybe some people don't think I'm going to say, because I feel like the pitching staff has carried them. I think it's time for the hitters to step up, because the pitching staff is going to be there. So now it's time. The pitching staff has done what they could. There's really nothing more some of them could do. There's nothing more that Jacob deGrom could do. Okay?
Well, he could probably.
He's arguably the best pitcher in baseball.
Maybe he could start having teams score negative runs. They would still lose.
Yeah, if that was possible. Yeah, there's nothing more that some of these guys on the rotation could do for them. So I'm going to say the team, the part of the team that needs to step up and carry them are the hitters. Their offense needs to get going. So with that being said, though, I'm saying that as if the pitching staff is pitching the way they are. Obviously, the pitching staff needs to stay the same. Just keep doing what you're doing. But now it's time for the offense to step up.
I'm going to go similar in terms of talking about pitching, but I'm going to say my answer is probably going to be the same for both teams. Bullpen for the Mets is going to be huge. We saw what Seth Lugo did last year. They added Betances. They added a couple of pieces to the pen. Edwin Diaz has to figure his stuff out. The guy's electric, man. Like watching him in Seattle and then watching him in New York, it's like watching an all-star compared to watching a 12-year-old on a little league field. Like there's no way that somebody that good could be that bad for an extended period of time. He's going to figure it out. Mets bullpen, if their bullpen figures it out and they could string together a couple of guys who could get them outs, they're going to be lethal. The offense, I'm not worried about. You had Alonso, you have McNeil. McNeil he quietly puts up sick numbers, that guy. They have enough in the tank. It's going to be on the bullpen. That cost them a lot of games last year.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I think the bullpen for both teams needs to step up. I feel like for the Mets, luckily for the Yankees, I think the bullpen still needs to step up, but they have stepped up a lot as well. For the Mets, it's not the same case. You really just haven't had a good bullpen in a long time. It's really just been those starters, and that's why those guys are injured so much, because they need to go complete games. And luckily, DeGrom has remained healthy. But for the Yankees, I think what needs to step up for them, that's tough because they're so deep and they're so talented. Oh man. Well, I think the pitching's obviously going to be improved with Cole being there in general. I'm not going to sit here and say a specific piece. I just think they need to stay healthy. That's it. I don't think I agree. The bullpen in certain situations, they need to step up. I think in the postseason, they need to step up a little bit more last year. But they're so talented and so deep, it comes down to staying healthy. If they remain healthy, I really don't see another team beating them. I really don't.
So you're saying the training staff has to step up?
Yeah, pretty much.
The new training
I don't know
staff.
what they're doing.
The new training staff has to figure it out. Mine is going to be a little bit more individualized for the Yankees. And I was going to say bullpen, but I'm like, those guys do their thing. I'm going to say the Yankees starting rotation from 2 to 5. Because Garrett Cole, we know what Garrett Cole is going to do. We know what to expect from Garrett Cole. It's Tanaka, Paxton, Happ, Montgomery, Loizaga. Heck, if you figure into the rotation somehow, whoever ends up being 2 to 5 has to step up and at least contribute. Tanaka can't have his streaks where he's the best pitcher in the game and then he looks like he's lost. Paxton can't have his, I'm hurt, and then come back and dominate. They need health and they need consistency. J. Happ cannot pitch like crap. Montgomery has to stay healthy. They need those guys to step up. So I think if the Yankees want to win the World Series, they're going to need those guys to step up because Cole's going to only do so much.
Yeah, you mentioned another good point because Tanaka, throughout his time with the Yankees, you mentioned it. There are sometimes he looks like the best pitcher in baseball, and then there are some days he shows up and it's batting practice for the other team. I mean, the amount of home runs he can give up in a single day sometimes it's mind blowing. But yeah, Tanaka, they all need to get they need to be consistent with what they're doing. Even a guy like Paxton. I mean, I feel like he pitched really well, but sometimes I just felt like he was inconsistent too. And sometimes you're really not that confident with him going on the mound. And to be honest with you, was it last year that he got real hot towards the end of the season? Like, wasn't he really hot at one point last year?
Yeah,
or was that half the year before?
Well, Hap was hot. Hap was 9-0 the year before. He had that really good second half, but Paxton had to start in Boston, and it was late July, early August, where he just turned it on. Like he was flat out on, and then for like 3 or 4 starts after, he was really good, and then he went. I think he got hurt, and then it just went down the hill.
I think for those two guys, and I think you throw in Sevy. I know he's not going to be there, but he's another guy you looked at last year and the year before. I know he's been injured a lot too, but all three of them are guys who, when they're on, they are on. But we shouldn't have to look to a game and say, I hope he's on. Because we don't have to deal with that with Cole. That's why we're all so happy. I mean, we hope we don't have to deal with that with Cole.
Yeah, that's
But for
key.
Cole, it's like he's got to be on. If he's healthy, he's on. We haven't had that in so long.
That's going to be huge for them. They really need that. There's a lot of factors that are going to play into this, and you can't predict injuries. You can't predict how guys are going to translate, what teams are going to do with their rosters, what young players that might not be major league ready might make their roster. Seattle's actually bringing in their first round pick from this year to their taxi squad. So there's a possibility that a kid who just got drafted a couple of weeks ago is going to make his major league debut this year. Like that's incredible to me.
Yeah.
Considering
that is. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they announced that.
Hopefully he's ready to go.
Well, he'll be thrown into the fire, man. That's fun. It's we always lose sight of it because the NHL, the NBA, the NFL, you get drafted, you essentially play. You don't go into the minor leagues, but baseball, it's like you could get lost in the minor leagues for 5 to 6 years.
Oh yeah. Yeah, baseball. I mean, listen, making the professional leagues and anything is it's rare that it happens for most people. That's why it's called a dream job. But baseball, I feel like might have the toughest road to get there. In basketball, most of those top picks, you're being drafted because you're the starting point guard next year. You're drafted as a quarterback because they want you to be the face of the franchise for the next 15 years. And by the way, you're starting in September. Like, baseball's a little different. You get drafted. Some guys never even make it to the pros. Some guys make it up there. It's a very difficult road, and it's a long process. But that's why you also applaud certain guys like Mike Trout and Bryce Harper, like those young guys who really came up so quickly, and like they've been as consistent as they are, and play at such a high level, because it's rare to see that.
And you have a situation where you see these guys on a daily basis and they're thriving like Trout. And you're amazed at what they're able to do because they've been around for so long. Like Trout's I think he's like 28 years old, but he's been around for 7 or 8 years already.
Yeah, man. Trout, he's not even from this planet. Like it's unreal. Like it really, and the fact that he's 28, another guy, he stays healthy. Who knows what kind of records he'll break. He's right now, I think if he retired, we're looking at him as one of the best to ever play. And we're saying that knowing that there's still a ton of potential that, comes with that.
I would say that if he retired right this minute, he would still be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the writers would put him in just because of how good he's been. Like, the numbers wouldn't matter to them. They would just put him in.
Yeah, I mean, people look at longevity and everything, but, I mean, for him, I think with that contract, he ain't retiring anytime soon anyway.
No.
But there's also a reason, like, we're talking about how great he is. There's also a reason why he got that contract, why he was the first ever player. What is it, $400 million or something? Like, it's up there, right? $400 million?
$350, I think. Maybe it is over 4.
It was $350.
Let's.
I thought it was 400.
I'll do some research here. Let's see this. Mike Trout's
I could have
contract.
swore I might be.
If you ever 12. Oh, you were right. 12 years, 426 million. Wow. I could think of 426 million things that I would do with that money.
Oh man, I think anyone could.
Oh, absolutely. But now, as we're kind of wrapping up here, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how excited are you for baseball to be coming back?
I gotta go 10. I mean, I'm always excited for baseball to come back. I love watching the Yankees. This time of year, I'm used to watching them on TV, listening to them on the radio when I'm in the pool, like listening to them on the radio when I'm in the car. I feel like I may not sit down and watch every single game, but I'm always tuned in at some point of every single game. Whether if I'm busy, I'm looking on my phone and I'm checking the score, I'm getting notifications. So it's been different this year not having baseball. You know, we're used to getting that, I would say, even through March with spring training. And then the regular season gets going in April, and I miss it. So I'm excited. I would say 10 for sure. What about you?
If I could go over 10, I think I would. But I'm going to go 10. You know how I feel about baseball, and it's crazy to think that it's been so long since we've had it. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited for the Yankees. I'm excited for Garrett Cole. I'm excited to put on MLB TV at night instead of watching reruns of shows or Netflix. I'm sick of it. I want to watch live sports. I want something to talk about. I want to see the NBA come back. I want to see the NHL, even though I'm not really a hockey fan, but we both decided we're going to kind of watch it somewhat. But yeah. I'm just excited for it. I just think it's great timing. I hope that everything works out. And I'm glad that we finally were able to get over that hump of just the constant arguing and debate from both sides. And we were finally able to figure out something that worked.
Yeah, and you mentioned other sports. I'm in the same boat. I'm excited for the NBA to get better, for NHL to get back. And I'm hoping that things, continue to get better so that we have an NFL season as well. I would love to have fans, like at least some type of fans at the NFL games, even if we know it's not going to be normal. But if you can get a few thousand fans in there, just, I would love to head over to MetLife one day this fall and winter. But I'm just excited to watch sports again. I'm excited to follow sports again. But it also adds to our show. We're actually going to be talking about something live for first time ever.
It's going to be great. But now I have to touch base on something. You're going to torture yourself by going to MetLife Stadium?
Listen. I know. I probably shouldn't have said that yet. I think my decision to go to MetLife is probably solely dependent on if Jamal Adams is in a Jets uniform come September. Because I don't even want to get started on that. If they decide that they're trading him away, I'm not sure if – I may be going to MetLife, but I might be wearing blue. Let's put it that way.
Saquon?
Something. I don't know.
Saquon's got to be
I don't know what I'll be wearing. But
Saquon's got to be the wave. That's my favorite. Listen, that's my favorite player. It broke my heart when the Jets drafted Darnold and Saquon was taking the pick before him. That's my guy right there. I think that if there was ever a situation where I got forced to wear a Giants jersey, it would be his. I don't think I would ever do it because I wear his Penn State jersey, but that would be the guy.
Listen, Saquon, another guy. I keep saying it. If he stays healthy, if they could open up holes for him, Saquon has the potential to go down as one of the best to ever play. Like, he's unbelievable. And another thing you got to like about him is he's humble. Like, he seems like a good guy. And I say that all the time on the show. I look for that in a lot of players. Like, that's why I love LeBron. I like the guys who they put in the time in the game. They don't cause problems. They do the right things, and they know the right things to say. And, they know how to handle themselves on and off the field. And Saquon's one of those guys. I like Saquon. I don't like the Giants, but I like Saquon. I like Daniel Jones, too. I'll give him that.
Eli Jr.
Yeah, but I respect Eli.
I do, too.
Don't get into the bobblehead conversations that we used to have, but you got to respect Eli.
Oh, of course. Now, so you're talking about humbleness, and I'm about to tweet that I want to get traded like Jamal's been doing.
I don't. That's not really him though. He's frustrated at this point. I don't think what he's doing is bad by any means. And this is why. I think I'm not a fan of when players go on these rants and demand trades when I don't feel like they have a real reason to do that. But I think Jamal has shown loyalty to this organization. He's shown them he's told them how many times that he's told the media he wants to be there. He'd love to be a Jet for life. We know he's lying, but he still said it. But pay the man. I don't blame him for doing this. I don't blame him at all if he doesn't even show up to training camp unless he's paid, because it's ridiculous at this point. And I told you last week when the rumors started to pour out again about this. The excuse for them is that they're going to pay him and they don't. But at the same time, there's people out there saying you don't pay a safety that kind of money. What did I say to you last week? Then don't draft a safety 6th overall.
Yeah,
what do you expect to happen? You draft him to be a superstar, but that's typical Jets. This is going to be the second player I know of our lifetimes, and just in the past, little over a decade, they're going to have 2 generational defensive players, and they're going to trade him away for nothing. For nothing. I don't care what they get for him. I'm not going to be happy. I really don't care if it's a proven player, if it's 2 first-round picks. It doesn't matter to me because Jamal Adams is your first-round pick. He's everything you want in a first-round pick.
So now I have a dire question as we wrap up today. If Jamal Adams gets traded, I know this is off baseball topic, but I have to ask. If Jamal gets traded, are we done being Jets fans? And if so, how are we going to pick a new team? Are we going to do this like we're going to do a live show, kind of bash the Jets and have people like write in why we should pick their team, or how are we doing this?
I might just about be done with them. I really might. I don't even think that their explanation for what they're doing is going to faze me. I don't care. I'm not going to accept their reasoning. As for the team I'm going to have to pick, that is tough. I hate to say this, but it's tough. And maybe we'll have people comment and give us a reason for why we should choose their team. Or maybe I'll just go follow Jamal. I don't know.
I was thinking that. Just follow Jamal, especially if he goes to Seattle. Those jerseys are tough.
I'm a big Russell Wilson fan, so. I mean, listen, I might still go to MetLife wearing blue. I might have to take a trip to Seattle. So, I don't know. We'll see how they do it. Ultimately, or I shouldn't say ultimately, but I really don't think that I should say eventually. Eventually, it's going to come to a point where they're going to pay him. I really don't think they're going to trade him. I think Joe Douglas, I don't know what he's waiting for, but I think Jamal is going to get locked up because I just don't think it's going to go over well with the Jets fan base if they trade him after we were told how many times that we're keeping him and this and that. So we'll see how it plays out.
It'll be interesting for sure, but if it does come to a point where Jamal gets traded, we will do a special show where we just talk about that, and we'll let you have your opinion on how you want us to proceed with that. As always, follow us on social media. Go to Delahanty Media on Instagram. Let's Debate Podcast, as you found us on Facebook tonight. And then at Let's Debate Pod on Twitter. You want some cool merchandise? Go to our store. It's located on the top. Just copy that link. Go in. Use the promo code Let's Debate for 10% off tonight. We're giving you a little deal because baseball's back. Exciting times. And we hope that you join us next Thursday. Kyle, final thoughts.
Just excited for baseball. I had a fun time doing this episode, obviously. I love talking baseball. It's nice to kind of be talking about something that's about to actually happen finally. So I'm excited to watch. I'm excited to actually have things to talk about that are live. So, yeah, I mean, thanks for everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.
Every week, every night, I've been watching games that have happened in the past, and you have no idea how many games I've actually seen and have put me to sleep because I've already know the outcome. I am happy that live baseball is coming back, so that is definitely something to look forward to. We're getting closer to, I don't want to say normal because we're still far away in the world, but in terms of sports, we're getting there. And like Kyle said, I love talking about the live stuff, and I can't wait to debate some more live actual sports in the upcoming future. So make sure you check out our show next Thursday, 8 o'clock. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and enjoy the preparation as the sports world is starting to come back. We'll see you next week.